Hello. Today we're going to be talking about how Nutanix Calm can be integrated with Nutanix Era, Nutanix Buckets, and Nutanix Carbon. So if you're not familiar with those three products, I'd recommend you head over to our developer blog, where I wrote a blog post about Nutanix Cloud Native. So Nutanix Cloud Native enables developers and administrators the ease of use and functionality to develop cloud native applications on their own private data center. So in that blog post, we actually go through and deploy a Postgres database managed by Era. We create an object storage bucket with Nutanix Buckets, and we deploy a Carbon cluster and then manage the YAML files and stand up a fully functional e-commerce website by the end of it. So what we're going to be doing today is taking that same e-commerce website and those manual deployment steps, and we're going to automate that with Nutanix Calm. So to get started, I'm going to go to my GitHub. So I have a couple of blueprints right now. So one is a Postgres provisioning. If you're just interested in the Postgres provisioning piece of this blueprint, then you can grab that one. But for this demo, we're going to grab the Nutanix Cloud Native Oscar app blueprint. So if I click on that, I'm going to go ahead and copy the raw link and download that. And then I'm going to come back over to Calm. And so just before I upload this, just one note, you want to make sure you have a Carbon cluster added as a provider into Nutanix Calm. So once you have that done, then we can come back to the blueprints and upload the blueprint we just downloaded. And then go ahead and name it. Select the project that is attached to your Carbon cluster. And now there's going to be two main things we need to set up. One is the credentials, which we'll do that first. So obviously this relies on having Nutanix Buckets, Nutanix Era, Nutanix Carbon all stood up. And so the credentials on your side are going to be different. So first we're going to do buckets. So this is the endpoint read and write access credentials. Next is the DB server creds. So this is for the Era Postgres database that gets stood up. This allows us to be able to SSH into it. So I already have a key over here. I'm going to just go ahead and output. And I'll copy that. And paste it in here. And then next, the error creds. This is to make API calls against the error server. So likely this is the same as your user interface error password. And finally, kube creds. So the Kubernetes support with Nutanix Calm is currently tech preview, and it only supports deployments, containers, and services. If you guys followed along the blog post I mentioned earlier, you noticed that we did a Kubernetes job, essentially a migration task to seed the newly provisioned database with application data. So that way we have an interesting application. So in order to make that happen within this Calm blueprint, we need to call the Kubernetes API directly. So that's the password here for the kube creds. I'm going to hit back, and I'll go ahead and save it. So now what we need to do is change the variables. So some of these you're going to need to change to match your environment. So the buckets IP, you'll definitely want to change that to your endpoint IP. The bucket's name, this needs to be an already created object storage bucket. So you can just create one called Oscar Static or anything else. If you do choose a different name, just sub that in here. So the profiles are for your Era database. So I'm just using the default, so likely on your side these can be left as is. But if you use custom ones, definitely change the name there. Same database parameter, same thing. Database name prefix, so we will be appending a timestamp to the database name. That way things stay unique, but this will be the prefix for it. And the database password, so this is what allows our application to access the Postgres database. So you can type anything you want in there. Database public key. So this needs to match up with the private key we just entered here. So if we output the public key, we can copy that over. All right. Era IP, this will definitely need to be updated on your side. This is just going to be the IP of your Era server. Cube namespace. So I'm going to change this to demo. It can be any already created namespace. If you're not sure what you want to add it in, you could always just do the default namespace. Kube master IP, this will need to be updated on your side. So this is just the Kubernetes master IP address to make an API call against it. And these bottom three, again, tie into the Era database. So network profile, SLA name, and software profile. Optionally, you can choose those or leave them default if you do have those same profile and SLA names on your Era server. So once that's changed, I'm going to go ahead and hit save again. Once it's saved, I'm going to go ahead and launch this. It is ready to be launched. So we'll hit create. So now I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video, and we can see the finished and running application. All right, so now that we've waited a bit and we see the Oscar app demo and we see it is running. If we go to the audit page, we can see all the various tasks we just went over: get cluster ID, get SLA ID, provision database, and so forth. So let's see how we can access our application. So I'm going to do kube control, specify the namespace, and get pods just to see everything launched as expected. Great, we see our migration down here that's completed, and our pods that are running our web app. So let's change this over to a service, and we see the Oscar Django service. So now let's get a node IP. So I'm going to copy this and our port, and just to get it all into one buffer at a time, I'm going to go and grab that and then put that into our web browser. And here you have it. We are our same fully functional Oscar e-commerce application, this time launched by Calm. And now we can continue to use Calm for the entire lifecycle management of this application. Thanks for your time today.